Hello, and welcome to my Christmas special. That's not really about anything Christmassy. If you're watching this on Christmas Day, then you're probably like me, and Christmas isn't really your thing, and you just want to chill out on the one day that you know that you're going to be having off. So today, we're going to be looking at the least Christmassy game there is.
You'll be reborn.
So I was scrolling through my Steam year in review the other day, and I noticed two things. The first thing was I did not play nearly enough games this year. And the second thing I noticed was the Outlast Trials, a game that I had forgot actually came out this year. 2023 was an absolutely fantastic year in gaming, and there are definitely a few gems that got looked over. And if the finals hadn't come out the other week, then I would be fairly confident in saying that the Outlast Trials was probably my favourite multiplayer game of the year. Now, before you get your pitchforks out, I am yet to play more than a couple of hours of Baldur's Gate 3, and I have not played Lethal Company yet. And also, just on a weird little side note, I'm not sure how Diablo 4 was even in contention for Best Multiplayer at this year's Game Awards. Like, Diablo 4. But before I get into the Outlast Trials, I really want to quickly talk about Fear. But more specifically, Fear 3. If you're unfamiliar, Fear was a single-player, horror first-person shooter franchise that was pretty much killed by the third game. From what I've been reading up, the development of Fear 3 was quite a bit of a mess. It only became more turbulent when the executives demanded that the campaign be made into a co-op game, and to make it more action-orientated, like Call of Duty. When the developers got word that this was the direction that the game was taking, their response was, co-op isn't frightening, co-op isn't scary when you're playing with someone else. Fast forward to around 2015, there was an influx of asymmetrical horror games. Games like Damned, White Noise, Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight had something that these other games didn't. It was still fun after the novelty of the horror wore off. Well, at least it was for me, until it became less of a party game and more of a hardcore competitive game. But these games prove that you can in fact have multiplayer horror games that can be somewhat scary. Now, I totally understand that Fear 3's development was just like an all-round shit show, but multiplayer horror can be done. These games aren't co-op, technically. But over the past couple of years, I've seen an influx in more just straight-up co-op horror games. Games like Phasmophobia or Escape the Backrooms and the aforementioned Lethal Company have all taken the step to try and just do co-op horror. The one game I feel like that does this the best is Grounded. Those spiders are the scariest fucking things to exist in gaming. Yeah, this is why.
What the fuck?
But I wouldn't call Grounded a horror game. More horror adjacent. But the Outlast Trials.
Get away from me! I'm stuck! Why am I stuck? Fucking get her off me, dude!
Oh, god damn it.
Why am I being stabbed? Oh, hi.
This is a horror game. The biggest problem that horror games, and more specifically multiplayer horror games, face is what happens when the game stops being scary. With single player games, the game only really has to remain scary till the end. With multiplayer, it has to remain scary until you're done with it, or it has to have something else to substitute the horror when the novelty of it runs out. Now, I mentioned Dead by Daylight before because once that game stopped becoming horror, it became a very decent competitive game. Now, I haven't really played it competitively, but I have friends who have spent hundreds of hours in the game, and it's like crack to them. And yes, I'm talking about you, Adam, with your 2,500 hours, you maniac. The Outlast Trials is a little different though. It doesn't have the competitive scene to fall back on, and it's completely co-op. So what does the Outlast Trials have? It has arm wrestling. Okay, so I'm only kind of semi-joking. The arm wrestling minigame is just like way more fun than it has any right to be. It's like the perfect in-between activity, like while waiting for your friends to finish their dinner or take a shit or something. The Outlast Trials starts off with a single-player tutorial, and it's story relevant, but it shows you the mechanics of the game while still being pretty intense. After that, you're plopped off into the Murkoff Institute, which is pretty much an asylum, and you are told to complete your therapy to be allowed to leave. So the game is structured like this. We have 4 programs. Within each of these programs, there's a main mission, 2 MK challenges, which are basically kind of smaller missions that take place somewhere within the main missions map, but with a different objective. And then there are the main missions again, but with much harder difficulties. When you complete the missions in all 4 of the programs, you unlock Program X, which reuse the missions from earlier programs, but ratchet the difficulty up by a lot. The missions in Program X reward you with reborn tokens, and if you collect 10 of those, and you get to see what it's like to be reborn. Now, if it sounds like you'll be replaying the same missions over and over, you wouldn't be wrong. But this game does a very good job of squeezing every little bit of content it can out of what it has. And the main program missions are so well designed, I really wouldn't want much more variation if it came at the cost of quality. But the game does do things to change it up. Puzzles, enemy placement, and items, they're all fairly randomized within the trials. And with additional modifiers being added as you progress further into the game, enemies' hearing is a lot better, more traps, less items. This is where I think the Outlast trials shine, because once the horror starts to wear off, that's when the difficulty starts to increase. And the game is able to fall back onto its very well designed mechanics to keep you engaged and keep the game very challenging. Look, you may not be scared of the policeman that shocks your balls anymore, but now he's going to one-hit KO your ass if you make a mistake. One thing I love about this game is the setting and the art style. I mean, most of the game just looks like crack dens, but they're very convincing crack dens. For real though, there are some very disturbing parts of this game, like the dentist tunnel thing. Like, I don't know how you come up with something like this, and it still freaks me out. Outlast Trials does disturbing, like, very well. And, like, while there are no shortage of, like, really fucked up set pieces in this game, I never feel like it goes overboard into, like, edgy territory. It's kind of hard to explain. Like, if we take the Grind the Bad Apples program, for example, like, your task is to push this boat full of mannequin children into a grinder. The main antagonist of the level is Mother Gooseberry, and she is trying to sabotage you throughout the level, and it's clear these mannequins mean a lot to her, as evidenced by how enraged she gets when you actually complete your task. And it's like some really dark shit. But I don't ever think it crosses the line into edgy. Now, this game isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There are problems. Firstly is the first post-launch program they added to the game. It just feels a little bit too samey to the other 3. And like I said before, I would rather the game be different and more interesting than just having more content for the sake of content. It doesn't really feel like it treads much, if any, new ground. Like I said, it's still fun though. Like, I was kind of just expecting more. My next gripe with the game is the ending to the game. And without spoiling it, I really liked it up until the very, very end, where I felt I had predicted exactly what the whole point of everything was. There wasn't an extra twist or an extra bit of detail that would have thrown me off the trail at any point. What I thought was happening happened. And because of that, I was pretty disappointed. I'm kind of hoping that the developers add multiple endings or a different ending in the future, because yeah, I was a little bit disappointed. The game is also a bit janky here and there, but nothing that can't be fixed, or probably hasn't already been fixed since I last played. But I haven't come across any like game-breaking bugs or anything, so I'm pretty happy with how the state of this game launched in early access. Overall, the Outlast Trials isn't perfect, but I absolutely think that it is the gold standard of co-op horror games. And this genre is kind of new, people are still experimenting with how to do it properly, but I think if you're aiming to make a co-op horror game, you should definitely take a look at this game. It's not scary forever, but the game has quite a bit of depth to it, and it's probably the game I've had the most fun playing with friends over the last year. But if you have not played the Outlast Trials yet, I highly recommend you do so. The game is currently in early access on Steam, but is planning to go full release in March of 2024, and they're planning on launching the game on consoles at the same time, with a new program and a roadmap with post-release content, which I'm highly looking forward to. And that's all I've got. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you're new. Thank you all so much for watching. This will probably be my last video for the year, so I look forward to seeing you all in 2024. Have a happy new year, everyone.
He's shocking my balls!